Oke, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfir wa na'udzu billahi min syururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina may yahdihillahu fala mudhillalah wa may yudlilhu fala hadiyalah. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wa asyhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu la nabiyya ba'dah wa la rasula ba'dah. Today we are going to learn about ideology of Islamic education and Arab culture. And, education is an important aspect of particular concern for countries in the world. In accordance with its function, education is a way to develop physical and spiritual abilities, shape character and personality, and increase one's dignity. The ability and dignity of the people of a country is determined by level. By the level. The ability and dignity of the people of a country is determined by the level of education of the country. Because of this, education is an important asset for a country, as with its function in improving and developing a society. Education plays a strong role in changing the culture that surrounds the society. The easiest example to find is the culture of the Arabs. The change of the Arab nation was so visible when the arrival of Islam was marked by the Prophet of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Arab society was previously said to be very far from civilization. Then Islam came to change the civilization, attitudes, and character of its people periodically. It should be underlined that the change shaped by education in Arab society at this time were fully influenced by Islam as a religion, which is its role in Arab society as an educational medium to teach world hereafter science, how religion can become an educational ideology that change Arab culture. Its foundation and basics, as well as the change that occur, will be discussed in this time. Ideology of Islamic education. Etymology. Ideology means a collection of systematic concepts that are used as the basis of opinion that provide direction and purpose for survival, way of thinking of a person or a group, understanding, theory and goals, which are a socio-political program. In terminology, ideology is defined as a system of values or beliefs that are accepted as fact or truth by certain groups. It is composed of a set of attitudes toward it composed of a set of attitudes toward the various institution, and process of society. While the ideology of Islamic education is a set of educational concepts that are used as a basis that provides direction and goals in accordance with Islamic law to form human beings in all fields. In Quran Surah Luqman, verse 12 until 19, mention that the purpose of education is related to the keyword ashkur, thanksgiving, which means obedience. Al-Jurjani explained that gratitude is to mobilize all the potential to worship Allah. If the concept of gratitude is associated with the goals of Islamic education, it can be formulated that the purpose of Islamic education, according to the first, is to develop all potential possessed in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To realize the goals of Islamic education, things that need to be considered are the categories of Islamic education curriculum: creed, Sharia, and morals. Islamic education must cover this three aspects to ensure Islamic education must cover these three aspects to ensure the realization of the goals of Islamic education. In realizing the goals of Islamic education, it is necessary to have methods that apply. The method has a very important position in effort to achieve goals because it becomes a meaningful means of subject matter arranged in the curriculum so that it can be understood and absorbed by students. With a method, a subject matter will not be able to process effectively and efficiently. Effectively and efficiently. In Surah Al-Luqman, verse 12 until 19, the method of Islamic education is also explained through Luqman's story in educating his son, namely, first, lecture method, such as Luqman's word and advice to his son. Second, the tabligh method, such as Luqman conveying everything that must be done by his son. Third, the method of being a role model, such as Luqman exemplifying good ethics to his son in terms of word and action. The method of command and prohibition, such as the prohibition of shirk, the command to do good to parent, and amar ma'ruf nahi munkar. In the ideology of education, there are many understandings. Among them are: first, there is conservative educational fundamentalism. These views minimize peace philosophical and are intellectual consideration and tend to base themselves on a relative uncritical acceptance of revealed truth or established social consensus, which is usually defined as common sense. Fundamentalist reasoning can be simplified into 5 things. There are authoritative answer to all the problem of life that have significance. The answer basically follow the authority from outside, uh, whether whether it be from religious revelations received by prophet and saints and signs, backed by faith, common sense, intuitive folk wisdom possessed by most people. The answer are not only authoritative, but also simple and straight to the point. They are unambiguous. They are unambiguous. Unambiguous can be directly understood by ordinary people, do not require special interpretation or expert intervention. The answer are what they are and are literal truth. The answer provided by intuition or faith are sufficient for anyone who desires to live well, to live a good life. However, one need not only to return to the certainties of general wisdom or to simple strength to the point religion, but it is also necessary to purify contemporary society and eliminate unnecessary element. And second, educational intellectualism. Intellectualism, philosophical reasoning is based on a world that is full of meaning. The existence of certain fundamental truths that are absolute and unchanging, precede or set a precedent for personal experience. Humans are not born with the provision of clear knowledge of this truth. So there must be awareness gained through experience learned in the natural world. In almost all cases, the aforementioned truth can be reached and understood through the practice of reasoning. And the third, there is educational conservatism. As for characteristic, the first, respect for the past, and second, organic conception of society, and third, communal unity, constitutional sustainability, and the fourth, against revolution, careful or evolutionary reform, and the fifth, religious foundation for the state to define source for legitimate authority, and the sixth, priority obligation of right, and the seventh, individual character and communal character are very important, and eighth, loyalty, common sense with realism and practically. And then there's educational liberalism. The philosophical foundation of educational liberalism are to assume that the best way to think is to perfect the natural process of problem solving by applying certain control and investigation, which will give birth to new, more objective knowledge, knowledge must be proven by applying ideas to solving practical problems that exist in the real world. And then educational liberationism, 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 educational liberationism. The ultimate goal of educational for liberationists should be the form of cultivating the rebuilding of society following a humanistic path, which emphasizes the full development of the unique potential of each person as a human being. The aim of educational is to encourage necessary social reform by maximizing personal independence in schools and by defending more human and humanizing conditions. The aiming of the school is to help students recognize and respond to the need for social reform or remodeling, to provide the information and skills needed to learn effectively effectively for themselves and to teach students how to solve practical problem through the application of technique. Solving problem individually or not or in group based on scientific rational methods. And the third, there is educational anarchism. Anarchism is a point of view that defend the elimination of all institutional restraint on human freedom as a way to fully realize the potential of humans that have been liberated. For anarchists, education. For anarchists, education, which is seen as a process that must exist to learn through natural human social experience itself, should not be confused with school matters. By reducing personal responsibility, the state and school make it difficult for children to be educated to be educated in the true sense of education. They help undermine real education and strengthen what was mere training. Schools, like the state itself, are established primarily to regulate the need of its own creation. We need a radical overthrow of institution. Deinstitutionalization, including to overthrow of schooling institution or deschooling of the many ideologies of education. The closest understanding to Islamic education is the ideology of conservatism. The characteristics contained in this ideology are in line with the concept of Islamic education, which is fully based on Islamic value and past fundamentals. It is difficult to accept change and priority the obligation of right. In terms of conservative ideology, the same characteristic is also found in the concept of Islamic education, namely in the relative and uncritical acceptance of revealed reasoning. This is this is clearly the basis of Islamic truth, Islamic thought, which is based on three main Islamic laws, namely Quran, which is the revelation of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and the Hadith, which comes from the word and action of the Prophet Muhammad, and Ijma, which comes from the consensus of the scholars. This rationale was later adopted in the concept of Islamic education. And then we move to cultural change. There is pre-Islamic Arab culture. In the social context, pre-Islamic Arab had several classes of people, different from one and another. The Arabs worship masters and despise slaves. Even the master is entitled to all the spoils and wealth. The slave is obligated to pay fines and tax. Slaves are like field where farming produce wealth. The prevailing power at the time was a dictatorial system. Many things were lost and neglected that the slave couldn't put up the slightest resistance. Many of them were starving, suffering, and hardship that sometimes claimed their life. One of the evil behavior of the ignorant society is the treatment of girls. Among this behavior is the act of planting a baby girl life for fear of humiliation and slander. The motive of the lower class of society doing the same things were for fear of falling into poverty, fakir. Especially in the Bani Asad and Tamim neighborhood. Meanwhile, boys are treated with love, expecting for the poor. Among the poor, they kill boys for fear of poverty. In the poverty, and in the economic context. Then, in the economic context, pre-Islamic Arab were in a state of darkness. In the economic context, being a trader is the most dominant means to meet the needs of life for the Arab community. At the time, famous Arab markets were open, such as Ukaz, Zilmajaz, Medina, and others. Pre-Islamic Arabic economic practice are in a state of darkness. This can be seen from their attitude in justifying any means to get money or something needed, such as gambling, extorting, stealing, cheating, robbing, or multiplying money to people who borrow money from him, such economic practice at a later stage. And creates a social gap between the rich and the poor. The fact above are an indication of a society that is far from rules and noble values. In the political context, and then we're moving to in the political context. In the political context, The system of government before Islam did that they did not have a court where they could obtain legal certainty about a case. Pre-Islam Arab did not yet recognize a complex system of governance as it today. Even if there was, the organizational structure was not yet perfect. The pre-Islam government system was they did not have a court where they could obtain legal certainty about the case, did not have the police as security guards, were not burdened with having to pay tax due to the absence of a government functioning as an executive body, and they also had no right to arrest convict to be sentenced in accordance with the law. Level and act of violating commit. And in religion, the majority of the Arabs of Jahiliyyah are felt to be far from the belief brought by the Prophet Ibrahim, namely believing in the existence of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala as Rob al-Amin. They follow the Wasani religion. Each tribe or tribe has its own idol as the center of worship. The names for the idols of the Jahiliyyah era were different, including Sanam, Watan, and Nushud. So the religious condition of the pre-Islamic Arab was fading away further away from the teachings of the Tawhid religion brought by Prophet Ibrahim. This religious teachings turned into a religion of paganism, a mixture of God and humans. And Arab culture after Islam. The arrival of Islam was marked by the birth of Muhammad in 571 Masehi. In Mecca, who later at the age of 40 was appointed as a prophet and messenger of Allah. This period later became a period of development for the Arabs to leave the era of ignorance and all its evil. In early days of his prophethood, the prophet focused on preaching in Mecca to instill the basic of faith and everything related to Aqidah. This can be observed in the matter discussed in Surah Makkiyah, which are take with issues of Aqidah and faith. In contrast to the next period, in Medina, the Prophet began to apply Islamic laws and economic development as the basis of the state and community life. 4 years foundation of Islamic society were laid by the Prophet in order to build a miniature state in accordance with the concept of Islam. First, the establishment of a mosque as a place for gathering and deliberation in addition to its main function as a place of worship. Second, brotherhood between immigrants, between immigrant Muslim Muhajirin and the original inhabitants of Medina, Ansar, even though they have no kinship by this can. Third, make an agreement to cooperate and help each other between Muslim and non-Muslim. And from a political point of view, the Prophet uphold the principle of justice. The principle of justice must be applied to all residents indiscriminately and indiscriminately and recognize the equality of all human beings before God. This principle is quite difficult to practice considering the Arab tradition that recognizes the superiority of one lineage or one particular tribe over another. Another principle is the principle of deliberation to solve all problems in order to achieve the common good. Islamic social principle, social justice. Islamic social principle, social justice tradition, Jahiliyah in human. The Prophet, who also taught the concept of buying and selling, which was different from the previous Arab tradition. There was no longer a trade monopoly or capitalist economic system. The status of women who used to be worthless was raised in such a way that they had an equal degree with men. Islamic marriage law is also applied by limiting a man to have 4 wives and truth a valid contract. A woman also get a share of the inheritance left by her husband or parents. Islam also forbids various despicable acts that have become a tradition, such as betting, gambling, drinking, drinking, summer, and other disgraceful. Islamic mirror the period of the Prophet leadership was heading for Islam. Territories that spread to the continent of Africa, Europe, and even Asia are evidence of the success of Islamic education brought by the Prophet. This success was not spared from the contribution given by philosophers, scientists, doctors, engineers, and scholars who helped spread Islam with their knowledge. The next period is the period of Islamic culture after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. At this time, Islamic culture is briefly divided into 3 periods, namely the classical period, the medieval period, and the modern period. The classical period began with the death of the Prophet in 632 Masehi, continue during the reign of Khulafa al-Rashidin and the Umayyad dynasty, which ended in 1250 Masehi. This period is known as the period of expansion, integration, and Islamic. The middle period began with the establishment of the Abbasid dynasty in 1250 Masehi and continued with the pace of emergence of the three major kingdoms in 1500 Masehi until 1800 1800 Masehi. The three major kingdoms in question were the Ottoman Empire in Turkey, the Mughal Empire in India, and the Safavid Empire in Persia. The end of this period closed with the start of the expansion of European countries to the Middle East and North Africa, which became the center of Islamic power. The last period is the modern period, which is the era of Islamic revival. Sorry. The last period is the modern period, which is the era of Islamic revival. This period began in 1800 Masehi and was the reaction of the Islamic world to Western colonialism. And we were going to conclusion of the many ideologies of education. The closest understanding to Islamic education is the ideology of conservatism. Yeah, conservatism. The characteristic contained in this ideology are in line with the concept of Islamic education, which is fully based on Islamic values and past fundamentals. It is difficult to accept change and priorities obligation over right. In the social context, pre-Islamic Arab had several classes of people, different from one another. The Arab worship master and this peace slaves. The prevailing power at the time was a dictatorial system. Meanwhile, the arrival of Islam was marked by the birth of Muhammad in 571 Masehi in Mecca, who later, at the age of 40, was appointed as a prophet and messenger of Allah. This period later become a period of development for the Arab to leave the era of ignorance and all is evil. Thank you. And there is presentation for me for the Islamic for the ideology of Islamic education and Arab culture. And I think it's enough. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.